The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, is one of the world's poorest countries, with a GDP per capita of just $584. This means that the average person living in the country produces less than $2 worth of wealth every single day, and they are living on even less than 6% of the global average and less than 1% of some advanced economies like the United States. At this level of poverty, GDP figures really start to lose their meaning as people revert to just making stuff for themselves rather than contributing to the wider economy. The DRC's economy does not need to be poor at all. It is one of the most materially rich countries in the world with vast reserves for a range of natural resources. If the country could efficiently extract these resources, it would generate $24 trillion in revenue at current market prices, enough just by itself to bring the living standards of the average Congolese citizen up to world standards for 2.5 decades. However, assuming nothing gets reinvested and no other industries are allowed to grow, which are very silly assumptions, making more reasonable predictions that a lot of this money would be recirculated through the economy and also build up other supporting industries, the DRC would not only be one of the wealthier countries in Africa but would be one of the wealthiest countries in the world now. The story of the DRC being plagued by corruption, war, and economic mismanagement is unfortunately nothing new by itself. One of the first videos on this channel was about the DRC and how its lack of stability meant that international institutions had little confidence to make the investments the country needed to get off the ground. The DRC is worth exploring again, not only because of its massive lost potential but also because of what that natural resource wealth is made up of. There is the usual stuff like gemstones, metal ores, and even petroleum, but it's also home to significant quantities for the planet's reserves of coltan, cobalt, and lithium, essential components in energy storage devices and electronics. The adoption of electric cars and the rise of battery energy storage means that the demand for these materials is expected to outstrip global supply this year. What is stopping the DRC from being able to take advantage of its natural wealth? What can the global community do to get rid of these barriers, and why are there any reasons to be hopeful about the DRC's economic future once we have done all of that? Once we have done all of that, we can put the Democratic Republic of the Congo one of the poorest nations. The economy of the DRC as it exists today started in 1960 when a country gained independence from Belgium after a terrible period of being exploited for its farmland, precious stones, and human labor. Independence was undoubtedly a positive step for the country and its people, but it was handled very poorly at the time of its independence. The Congo crisis was a drawn-out period of political upheaval, and the fighting was indirectly supported by both the United States and the Soviet Union. By 1965, following a political stalemate, watched elections, and a military coup, the U.S.-backed President Mobutu emerged as the country's sole leader and turned the country into a military dictatorship almost immediately. In conclusion, the DRC has a long history of struggling to attract foreign investment and has a long way to go to improve its economic future. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, has been struggling economically, with a lack of industrial development and low-cost labor. This has led to a pervasive challenge for leaders who want their people to be well off, as wealthier people are harder to control and maintain power. The country's political rivalries have also made it difficult for the general population to ask questions about how their government is run, creating an endless feedback loop that is almost impossible to solve without undue intervention in a sovereign country's politics. The level of poverty in countries like the DRC can be difficult for economists from advanced countries to understand. GDP is a measure of the total market output of an economy, but there are some non-final goods that are not included in total GDP figures. Non-final goods include non-final goods like engines, illegal goods and services, and household production. Household production is essential for undeveloped economies like the DRC, as it allows households to survive on just $2 a day. Economists use purchasing power parity to adjust the value of GDP, as it is not fair to compare $2 in a country like the DRC where a decent meal can cost less than 50 cents to $2 in a country like Australia or Switzerland where lunch is less than $50. The DRC has a GDP per capita of $11.79, meaning the average person is actually living on the equivalent of $4 a day. People in countries like the DRC are very self-sufficient at a household or community level, farming their own food, collecting their own water, and even building their own housing. This allows them to look after themselves and perpetuates the cycle of poverty by making it hard to specialize. The foundation of modern economics is that individuals, organizations, and sometimes even entire countries should focus on what they are good at, as if everyone specializes in something and then trades the stuff they make around, we will be left with more overall wealth. In conclusion, the DRC has struggled to build out any productive industry due to its low-cost labor and low-cost labor. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank have provided loans to the DRC to help them build infrastructure and invest in productive industries. However, the country's political rivalries and lack of economic development have made it difficult for the country to achieve its goals. To address these issues, it is crucial for individuals, organizations, and countries to focus on what they are good at and focus on what they are good at. Adam Smith, the grandfather of economics, used the example of a sewing pin to illustrate how the process of creating a single sewing pin can be more efficient and efficient for some people. This is because they can take a small profit from the value they add to the process and use that profit to buy more sewing needles than they would have been able to produce themselves or anything else. However, the household industries that maintain most citizens in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, prevent them from being able to specialize and build out their economic wealth. Most people in the DRC earn only $4 a day, making it impossible to survive by specializing in traditional roles. Even if better jobs became available, it would be a big ask for the people of a war-torn country marred by an endless history of violence and mismanagement to give up their self-sufficiency for the hope that this time will be different and that economic growth can be sustained for long enough for them to support themselves and their family by engaging in activities that help their entire economy. The DRC has a GDP of $55.3 billion, but its small GDP is spread out over one of the largest populations in the world, with a GDP per capita of 584. The country gets a 2 out of 10 on our leaderboard, as stability and confidence are the unfortunate reasons why the country is unable to capitalize on the material wealth advantages it has available to it. To potentially keep itself off the bottom of the leaderboard, the DRC has doubled in size in the past decade, and while it wasn't growing from a high benchmark to begin with, it still shows a trend in the right direction. The country's average worker has been put in a situation where they have to be self-sufficient and contribute to the general economy as an afterthought.